WJ Handy Dad here, and today we're doing a collaboration video with Panther platform and hopefully a bunch of others, and we're talking about the difference between owning a Crown Victoria Police Interceptor like I have versus owning a civilian model such as what Chuck owns, including the Mercury Grand Marquis and Lincoln Town Car. So I hope we get some more collaborators that have the town cars and Grand Marquis, so we kind of get a better feel for what the differences are. So when this question is asked online, I always answer that I prefer the Police Interceptor models over the civilian models, and I always get a bunch of flack back from folks about, oh, they're dirty, they're nasty, they're abused, whatever. And yeah, that may be true, but you know what? I clean them up real well, and they are built to handle it. And so one of the main things that I like about the Police Interceptor over the civilian models is the performance. And no, these are not race cars. No, they don't have some little cop chip in them giving them 1,000 horsepower or anything like that. Those are just rumors that people talk about on the internet. What they do have is everything is built to handle police work better than a civilian model. You have things like fluid coolers for your power steering, for your transmission, for your oil. I don't think you have those on the civilian models. Maybe some of them do. Those are mainly designed to keep the car running safely during long idling hours, as well as under high-speed pursuit situations where you may be redlining quite a bit. While the engines are basically the same, down in the airbox, the opening on the Police Interceptor is just a little bit throatier. It allows for more airflow. The trade-off being that it's a little bit louder intake. You probably get less gas mileage because more air means more fuel consumption, but it gives you the ability to have better performance that you wouldn't have with a civilian model. Another thing you get with the police vehicle that you don't get with the civilian is the beefed up alternator. So it just puts out more power, which for most of us civilians, it's not going to matter, as we're not powering police radios and lights and sirens and all the other stuff that they have. But it's still nice to have a more powerful alternator. And while you don't get a, quote, cop chip in the way that most people think of that term, you are getting a police tune on your ECU, so you're getting more aggressive shifts and different things like that that make it a little sportier, more performing type of vehicle. Next is the brakes, and I can't stress this enough. I really think that police quality brakes should be on all civilian cars. I think it would save a lot of people from wrecking. The brakes are phenomenal, and they don't fade. And what I mean is, if you gas and then brake and then gas and then brake and then gas and then brake, most civilian cars will eventually get what we call brake fade. They get so hot that no amount of pedal force will slow the vehicle down. These really fight that fade and are meant to stay in the game, so I've never been able to get them to fade, not that I really try. Next, the wheels. I love this look. I don't like the civilian look. These are great. You tear them up, you repaint them. It's no big deal. They're really tough and either ugly or good looking, but easy to maintain. You get a scrape in a civilian wheel, tears up the aluminum or whatever, you're probably buying a new wheel. These, paint them and go. The next thing that's high performance is the suspension. These are meant to handle, so you've got better shocks and struts and springs, and all the components of the suspension are designed to handle hard cornering and so forth. And again, I'm a more performance oriented driver, so I appreciate having that rather than that bouncy Cadillac like ride. And don't get me wrong, these, while they're performance oriented, are still very comfortable, at least in my opinion. Don't forget the police wiring you've got some hot and accessory wires already fused right under there, ready to go to add whatever accessories you want. You're not going to get that in a civilian model. I'll put up the chart of what they all are, with the color schemes and what they do. There's also one in the trunk. There's also one in the trunk right there. Now a lot of you are going to say it's not enough for the subwoofer that you want, but nonetheless you've got fused power right there that can handle something. And let's not forget the badging. Who doesn't like seeing that on the back of their car? Now, of course, the Police Interceptor interior is bare bones. You typically don't have any of the things that you get with the higher end civilian models. That being said, these seats are extremely comfortable for somebody like me. I'm a bigger guy, 250 pounds. I think I could ride in these all day long and not be uncomfortable. They're very supportive and yet comfortable. They seem to be built to handle, sitting for a long time, compared to civilian vehicles where I get in and after a while I'm kind of like sore and need to move around and get out of the car. This seat came out of a Mercury Grand Marquis, and it is plush and nice compared to the police seat. So my kids prefer to sit in this one if they have a choice. So I will give that to the civilian models. The back seats are probably a heck of a lot better in the civilian models. The police back seat is definitely not as nice with the vinyl. Coolness factor, or the Vic factor, is something that's certainly less frequent nowadays, as these are basically been retired from most departments. Still a few of them active duty out there. But back in the day, when these were still the dominant police vehicle in service, when you were driving one of these, you got a lot of road respect. People got out of your way, people didn't tailgate you, people gave you plenty of room on the sides, people would slow down and pull over if they were in the fast lane. Lots of things like that. Really, the downside to it was if you were going down a one-lane city street, chances are they were going 5 below the speed limit and making complete stops that lasted 5 or 10 seconds. Would kind of drive you crazy. You'd just be like, go! But even without all that, there still is kind of a coolness factor to driving an old cop car. And of course, the rear end gear. Your typical civilian model is going to come with a 273 rear end, which is geared for gas mileage and fuel efficiency rather than performance, whereas the Police Interceptors typically came with a 327 or even a 355 rear end. Now obviously anybody can change their rear gear to whatever they want. A vehicle that produces less torque generally performs better with a higher number rear end gear, because torque is what's going to turn the rear wheels. So if you had a 1.0 rear end, then that would mean every turn of the drive shaft would turn the wheels one time. That would take a lot of torque to be very fast off the line. If you have a gear, say high 4s or 5, it's probably going to melt your tires off the line and then not be very practical on the freeway when you're trying to go 70, 75 or whatever your speed limit is. So the good compromise for most of our Panther cars is probably the 355, 373 gears. It's going to give you good push off the line and still give you freeway drivability. That being said, a lot of the police cars did come with the 327, which is more of a gas mileage compromise gear rather than performance. And I've heard it worded that The highway vehicles typically came with 327s, and the city vehicles typically came with 355s. I haven't really seen that to be true in my case, so all the vehicles I've ever had the 327 with the track lock rear end. One of the downsides is you can typically get these in any color you want as long as it's white, black, or black and white. Now, obviously that's not completely true, but the vast majority of the police vehicles came in one of those 3 color patterns. Of course, you might get lucky and find an unmarked detective car or something similar that has a different paint, like this silver birch metallic. I really love the way it looks. Some will say that the civilian models have more creature comforts like backup cameras, parking sensors, but obviously those are real easy to add. I have videos on how to do all that. Same thing with adding interior lights. You have all the wiring already in place. And of course you can also add things like a 10-inch double DIN stereo, and a USB power source with a voltmeter attached to it. And while they don't come with center consoles, usually the police cars can be fitted with several different types of center consoles. I see people using them out of Explorers and so forth. But I'll be honest, my favorite is this Walmart special. I think it was like 29 bucks, and it is the most user-friendly of all the center consoles I have in all of my vehicles. This is my favorite. It just works. It's got a lot of storage in the middle. The cup holders up front seem to work really well. This back piece falls off, but you can JB weld it and then it'll stay. And just don't put a lot of weight on it and it probably won't fall off anyway. But like I said, by far my favorite center console right there.